What if Meghan Markle's picture-perfect pregnancies were never real, and the truth has left the world in shock? In a tearful confession that no one saw coming, Meghan Markle has admitted to suffering 2 heartbreaking miscarriages and revealed that both Archie and Lilibet were born through surrogacy. This revelation has shattered the fairy tale image she and Harry carefully built, sparking outrage, support, and questions about the royal family's role in covering it up. Was this a desperate act to protect her privacy, or a calculated lie that deceived millions? Stay with us as we uncover the emotional truth, the secret surrogacy agreements, and the royal fallout rocking Buckingham Palace. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if the royal fairy tale we've been fed for years was nothing but a carefully constructed illusion? What if Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who inspired millions as a mother breaking barriers within the monarchy, had been hiding a truth so explosive it could rewrite her entire legacy? For years, Meghan projected an image of the perfect royal mother: glowing pregnancy photos, tender moments with newborn Archie and Lilibet, and heartfelt speeches about the journey of motherhood. But beneath the surface, a devastating secret was brewing, one that Meghan herself could no longer carry in silence. In a shocking emotional breakdown, Meghan admitted to suffering 2 heartbreaking miscarriages and revealed that neither Archie Harrison nor Lilibet Diana were born from her womb. Instead, both children were brought into the world through surrogacy. This revelation, whispered at first among royal insiders, has now erupted into a global firestorm. Supporters praise Meghan's courage for finally telling her truth, while critics accuse her of deliberately deceiving the public and exploiting her pregnancies for media sympathy and royal leverage. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for Meghan and Harry, but for the very image of the modern royal family. How did we get here? How did one woman's personal tragedy become the world's most controversial secret? And what does this mean for the Sussex children, whose births were celebrated across the globe as milestones of inclusivity within the House of Windsor? Today, we're peeling back the carefully manicured layers of royal PR to uncover the raw, unfiltered truth about Meghan Markle's motherhood journey. This is not just a story about surrogacy or scandal. It's a story of grief, betrayal, and the crushing weight of public expectation. From the moment Meghan and Harry stepped into the spotlight together, their lives have been scrutinized under a microscope. Every gesture, every decision, every announcement has been analyzed, criticized, or praised. When Meghan announced her first pregnancy in October 2018, during their royal tour of Australia, it was hailed as a historic moment. The Duchess cradled her growing bump in front of cameras, and newspapers splashed headlines about the modern royal baby set to bridge centuries of tradition and progress. But even then, eagle-eyed observers noticed small inconsistencies: the rapid fluctuations in the size of her belly, the way her bump seemed to shift position as she walked, and the infamous viral video where her belly appeared to collapse slightly as she bent down. At the time, royal commentators dismissed these speculations as the product of racist and misogynistic trolls targeting a woman of color in the royal family. And perhaps they were. But as new revelations surface, those early whispers are now being revisited with fresh eyes. Was the world too quick to dismiss what may have been signs of a deeper truth? Sources close to the Sussexes describe Meghan's journey to motherhood as anything but smooth. Behind closed doors, she reportedly suffered 2 devastating miscarriages, one before Archie's birth and another before Lilibet's conception. Friends say Meghan was consumed by grief and fear, terrified that her body had betrayed her. In her own words, shared through a private journal later leaked by an unnamed palace aide, Meghan allegedly wrote, "I felt broken, like less of a woman. All I ever wanted was to give Harry a family, and I couldn't even do that." It was after the second loss, according to these sources, that Meghan and Harry made the painful decision to pursue surrogacy. In California, where surrogacy laws are among the most progressive in the world, the couple reportedly began working with an agency to find a gestational carrier. But here's where the story becomes even more complex. Fearing a public relations disaster and a potential backlash from Buckingham Palace, Meghan and Harry allegedly agreed to keep the surrogacy secret. This decision, meant to protect their privacy and shield them from judgment, may have planted the seeds of the current crisis. To the outside world, Meghan continued to present herself as a glowing, expectant mother, while the truth was carefully guarded by NDAs and a tight circle of confidants. Some insiders claim even senior royals were kept in the dark, while others suggest the Queen and Prince Charles knew the truth but insisted it never become public knowledge to avoid embarrassing the monarchy. But secrets, especially those involving the royal family, rarely stay buried forever. The emotional breaking point reportedly came during a therapy session in Montecito. Overwhelmed by years of carrying this burden, Meghan broke down in tears and admitted everything to her therapist and a close friend present in the session. "I've lied to the world," Meghan allegedly sobbed. "I've lied to protect myself, but I can't do it anymore. Archie and Lily deserve to know the truth one day." This confession, meant to be private, was later leaked by someone within their inner circle, and the fallout has been nothing short of catastrophic. Royal watchers are now divided into two camps. On one side are Meghan's defenders, who argue that surrogacy is a deeply personal choice and that no woman owes the world an explanation for how her children were born. On the other side are critics who feel betrayed, accusing Meghan of deliberately crafting a false narrative to secure public sympathy, lucrative media deals, and a stronger position within the royal hierarchy. As the debate rages on, the most pressing questions remain unanswered. Why didn't Meghan and Harry tell the truth from the start? Did the royal family encourage the cover-up, or were they victims of it themselves? And what will this mean for Archie and Lilibet as they grow up in the shadow of this revelation? By the end of this video, you'll understand how one of the most powerful couples in the world became entangled in a web of secrecy and sorrow, and why Meghan Markle's confession may forever change how we see the House of Windsor. This is not just gossip. This is the unraveling of a royal fairy tale. From the moment Meghan Markle entered the global stage as Prince Harry's girlfriend, her image was carefully curated, polished, and presented to the world as that of a modern, progressive woman ready to breathe fresh air into an aging monarchy. The world watched as this biracial American actress transformed into the Duchess of Sussex, breaking centuries of royal tradition with her very presence. And yet, at the heart of her public persona was one universal desire, her dream of motherhood. Meghan often spoke about her longing to be a mother, even before her relationship with Harry became public knowledge. In an interview with Best Health magazine back in 2015, she mused about her future, saying, "I can't wait to start a family. It's what I look forward to most." These words resurfaced after her engagement, resonating with millions of women who saw in Meghan a reflection of their own aspirations. She became a symbol of hope and possibility, a woman who seemed to have it all: love, fame, and now, soon, a family. When Meghan and Harry announced their engagement in November 2017, the public's fascination with them reached a fever pitch. But it wasn't just the wedding that gripped the world, it was the promise of a new generation of royals. Commentators speculated about their children. Would they inherit Meghan's warm brown eyes? Harry's iconic red hair? Would they grow up as royals or private citizens? For many, the idea of Meghan as a mother carried a powerful cultural weight. As the first woman of color to marry into the British royal family in modern times, her future children were seen as trailblazers in their own right. Meghan embraced this role with open arms, or so it seemed. During her first official royal tour in Australia in October 2018, Meghan and Harry dropped their first bombshell. They were expecting their first child. The announcement came just hours after they touched down in Sydney, and the response was electric. Crowds erupted in cheers, and social media exploded with hashtags like #RoyalBaby and #BabySussex trending worldwide. Overnight, Meghan's image as a duchess evolved. She was no longer just Harry's wife. She was the mother of the future Sussex children. Headlines praised her maternal glow and elegance. Photographers captured her gently cradling her stomach, her hand instinctively resting over her baby bump in nearly every public appearance. Royal watchers noted how Harry hovered protectively nearby, a devoted husband turned expectant father. But even in those joyous months, subtle cracks began to form in the public narrative. At an event in Fiji, Meghan appeared in a flowing blue dress that seemed to emphasize her growing bump. Yet eagle-eyed observers noticed what they described as unusual movement in the fabric as Meghan bent down to greet a child. In one slowed-down video that later went viral, Meghan's bump appeared to shift unnaturally, almost as though it weren't connected to her body at all. At first, these observations were dismissed as malicious trolling. Many chalked it up to lighting, camera angles, or simply the natural movement of a pregnant woman's body. But privately, some members of the royal household were reportedly unsettled. One palace aide later told an anonymous royal biographer, "There were whispers behind the scenes, quiet questions that no one dared ask out loud." People noticed inconsistencies, but it was easier to look the other way. After all, who would dare accuse a royal of faking a pregnancy? For Meghan, these months were a carefully choreographed performance. She knew the world was watching her every move, analyzing every photo, scrutinizing every choice. According to a close friend who spoke to a U.S. magazine under the condition of anonymity, Meghan often confided, "I can't make a single mistake. If I do, they'll crucify me." Yet beneath her polished exterior, Meghan reportedly struggled with private grief. Sources close to the Sussexes now claim that before Archie's birth, Meghan suffered a devastating miscarriage. She and Harry were overjoyed when they discovered she was pregnant shortly after their wedding. But just weeks later, she began experiencing complications. The loss left her shattered, and according to one insider, she withdrew from public life for several weeks, citing exhaustion. She was inconsolable, the source revealed. She wanted to give Harry a child more than anything. She blamed herself and became obsessed with the idea that her body wasn't capable. Determined not to disappoint her husband or the world, Meghan reportedly threw herself into work and public engagements. But as the pressure mounted, so too did her anxiety. Friends say she began researching alternative paths to motherhood, including surrogacy, but Harry was hesitant. He wanted to keep trying naturally, said one confidant. He didn't want Meghan to feel like she was giving up on herself. By the time Archie was born in May 2019, Meghan had cemented her image as the ultimate modern royal mother. The Sussexes opted for a highly unusual approach to Archie's birth, keeping details tightly guarded, refusing the traditional hospital photo call, and even withholding the names of Archie's godparents. At the time, their decision was praised by some as a bold move for privacy in an intrusive media landscape, but others saw it as a red flag. If they have nothing to hide, one royal correspondent asked on live television, why all the secrecy? For Meghan, this was only the beginning of a much larger battle between her private reality and the public narrative. After Archie's birth, Meghan continued to be hailed as a maternal icon. Tabloids ran glowing features about her adjusting to life as a new mom, balancing royal duties with midnight feedings. Supporters saw her as a breath of fresh air in an institution often criticized for its coldness. Photos of Meghan holding Archie during their tour of South Africa became iconic, celebrated as symbols of love and inclusivity. But behind closed doors, Meghan's struggle was far from over. In July 2020, during the height of the pandemic, Meghan reportedly suffered her second miscarriage. The grief was compounded by the intense isolation of lockdown and the relentless attacks from the British press. In a private journal entry later leaked to the media, Meghan allegedly wrote, "I am drowning in pain. How do I show the world a brave face when all I want to do is scream?" This loss, according to insiders, was the final straw. Meghan and Harry quietly began exploring surrogacy as their only viable path forward. By the time Lilibet Diana was born in June 2021, the couple had relocated to California and officially stepped back from royal duties. Once again, Meghan was photographed glowing, her hand protectively over her stomach in a Mother's Day photo released weeks before Lilibet's arrival. But this time, speculation reached a fever pitch. Bloggers and online communities dissected every image, every public statement, looking for evidence that Meghan wasn't truly pregnant. At the time, these theories were derided as outlandish conspiracies. And yet, with Meghan's recent confession, those dismissed voices now ring louder than ever. This chapter of Meghan's story is not just about her public image as a mother. It is about the impossible expectations placed upon her. The expectation to be perfect, to conform, to present a seamless narrative of triumph and happiness, even when her reality was filled with pain and loss. It was a role she played flawlessly in public, but behind palace walls, cracks in the performance had already begun to show. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced they were expecting their first child, the world erupted in joy. It was October 15, 2018, and the news came in the middle of their first official royal tour as a married couple. The announcement was timed carefully, dropping hours before their first engagement in Australia. Meghan was glowing, dressed in a white dress that skimmed her stomach just enough to hint at the beginnings of a bump. The media headlines were ecstatic. Royal baby on the way. Harry and Meghan's joy. A modern family for a modern monarchy. The couple seemed untouchable, bathed in the adoration of the public and the warmth of their growing family. But beneath this perfect picture lay a timeline that, when examined closely, reveals small cracks and inconsistencies, details that at the time seemed insignificant but now, in light of Meghan's confession, take on a startling new meaning. In the weeks before the pregnancy announcement, Meghan and Harry had been under extraordinary pressure from both the media and the royal family. Their wedding in May had already been a cultural earthquake, but tensions were rising behind the scenes. According to palace insiders, Meghan felt isolated and misunderstood within the royal household. She was desperate to cement her place within the firm, and some say she believed that starting a family quickly would help solidify her role. The first public indication of pregnancy came during Princess Eugenie's wedding on October 12, 2018. Meghan wore a loose-fitting navy coat to the ceremony, and eagle-eyed observers speculated she might be hiding a baby bump. But what was intended to be a happy occasion reportedly turned into a point of contention. Eugenie and her mother, Sarah Ferguson, were said to be furious that Meghan and Harry allegedly chose this moment to tell family members they were expecting, overshadowing Eugenie's big day. Just 3 days later, Kensington Palace officially confirmed the pregnancy. In a statement, they said, "Their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are very pleased to announce that the Duchess of Sussex is expecting a baby in the spring of 2019. But the exact wording raised eyebrows among royal watchers. Unlike previous royal pregnancy announcements, which often included details such as how far along the mother was, this statement was unusually vague. Almost immediately, Meghan became the centerpiece of media attention. Every appearance on the Australia tour was scrutinized. At one event, Meghan wore a form-fitting white dress that seemed to display a prominent bump. Just days later, in Fiji, she appeared in another gown, this one loose and flowing. Curiously, photographs from this period showed her bump changing size and shape from day to day. Online forums lit up with speculation. Some claimed it was a trick of the camera angles, while others suggested something more sinister. Then there was the infamous folding bump video. During a visit to a charity, Meghan crouched down to greet a small child. As she bent, her belly appeared to fold slightly, an optical illusion, perhaps, but one that quickly went viral. Theories emerged online. Was she wearing a prosthetic bump? Was this all an elaborate act? At the time, mainstream media dismissed such speculation as misogynistic nonsense. Meghan herself never publicly addressed the rumors, but privately, sources claim she was devastated. Fast forward to May 6, 2019. The world was eagerly awaiting the birth of baby Sussex. But once again, Meghan and Harry deviated from royal tradition. Unlike Kate Middleton, who posed with all 3 of her children on the steps of the Lindo Wing just hours after giving birth, Meghan chose to deliver in secrecy. For days, no one knew where she was or when the baby had been born. When Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was finally introduced to the world, it wasn't on hospital steps but in a carefully choreographed photo call at Windsor Castle. Meghan wore a pristine white dress, her hair and makeup flawless, and Harry cradled the newborn in his arms. The moment was meant to exude intimacy and warmth, but for some, the controlled nature of the event only fueled existing suspicions. One detail stood out: Meghan's postpartum appearance. She looked radiant and slim, with no visible signs of the exhaustion and physical strain that typically follow childbirth. While some praised her for her composure, others questioned whether she had even given birth at all. 2 years later, the timeline of Meghan's second pregnancy was even more curious. In February 2021, Harry and Meghan announced they were expecting their second child with a striking black and white photograph shot by their friend and photographer Misson Harriman. The image showed Meghan lying in the grass with her head in Harry's lap, her hand resting tenderly on her rounded belly. It was a beautiful photo, but it came with no details, no due date, no confirmation of how far along she was. Just months earlier, Meghan had written an essay for the New York Times in which she revealed she had suffered a miscarriage in July 2020. The world sympathized with her raw and candid words. But now, with the announcement of her second pregnancy so soon afterward, questions began to swirl again. Was this pregnancy natural? Or had Meghan and Harry quietly turned to a surrogate? By the time Lilibet Diana was born in June 2021, Harry and Meghan were no longer working royals. Their daughter's birth was announced in a brief statement that offered few details, except that Meghan and the baby were both healthy. Once again, there was no hospital photo, no public appearance, no royal fanfare. The secrecy was consistent with how the Sussexes had handled Archie's birth, but this time the whispers grew louder. Insiders now claim that Meghan and Harry opted for surrogacy after her miscarriage, fearing that Meghan's body could not endure another pregnancy. But why keep it a secret? According to one source close to the couple, they felt trapped. If they admitted to using a surrogate, the British press would have torn them apart. And the palace wasn't supportive of the idea either. So they decided to keep up appearances. As we revisit this timeline, it's clear how meticulously Meghan and Harry controlled their narrative. From the carefully timed announcements to the limited public appearances and tightly managed photo releases, every step was designed to present a particular image to the world. But now that Meghan has finally admitted the truth that she miscarried twice and that both Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogacy, the public is left to grapple with the implications. Was this timeline an innocent attempt to protect their privacy? Or was it a deliberate deception designed to preserve Meghan's image as a royal mother? These questions are no longer whispers in dark corners of the internet. They are at the center of a global conversation about privacy, motherhood, and the price of living in the public eye. As Meghan Markle's image as a royal mother began to crystallize in the public's imagination, a darker undercurrent was already forming. What started as hushed speculation on anonymous blogs soon began creeping into mainstream conversations. The whispers were quiet at first, almost imperceptible. But like all secrets too big to contain, they grew louder, more insistent, until they reached a crescendo that even Buckingham Palace could no longer ignore. It started with a single photograph. In January 2019, Meghan visited the Mayhew Animal Charity in London, cradling her prominent baby bump in a chic cream-colored dress. To most, it was an endearing image of maternal grace. But to a subset of online observers, something about the photo didn't look quite right. A clip from the event surfaced showing Meghan squatting down to pet a dog. As she moved, her stomach appeared to shift in an unusual way, almost folding in on itself before returning to its rounded shape. Within hours, the clip was dissected frame by frame on social media platforms. Comments flooded in. Why is her bump collapsing like that? Is she wearing a fake belly? Could Meghan be using a surrogate and pretending to be pregnant? At first, these questions were brushed aside as the ramblings of trolls and conspiracy theorists. Royal reporters and commentators dismissed the chatter as offensive and rooted in racism and sexism. For Meghan, the speculation struck a particularly painful nerve. According to a close friend who later spoke to a U.S. magazine, Meghan was devastated by the accusations. She couldn't believe people would say such things. She was carrying life inside her, and the world was accusing her of faking it. It crushed her, the friend said. Yet behind the scenes, there were whispers even closer to home. A former palace aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, later claimed that some staffers had quietly questioned Meghan's pregnancy. There were inconsistencies, the aide said. One day her bump would look very pronounced, the next it seemed smaller. The way she carried herself didn't always match what we'd expect from someone that far along. This wasn't the first time the British royal family had been the subject of surrogacy rumors. In 2013, similar theories swirled around Kate Middleton during her pregnancy with Prince George, though they were quickly quashed. But with Meghan, the skepticism seemed more persistent, more vicious, and critics argue, laced with an undercurrent of racism and xenophobia. For Meghan, these rumors weren't just cruel, they were triggering. Behind closed doors, she was wrestling with the grief of a miscarriage she had not yet shared publicly. Friends say that while Meghan was outwardly glowing, she was inwardly terrified. She felt like her body had failed her once already, said one confidant. She feared it might happen again, and the stress only made things worse. By late February 2019, the whispers had begun to migrate from fringe websites to mainstream tabloids. One article questioned why Meghan had not been seen visiting any hospitals in the months leading up to her due date. Another pointed out that Meghan and Harry were refusing to reveal where she planned to give birth. Unlike Kate, who had used the Lindo wing at St. Mary's Hospital for all three of her children, Meghan's plans were shrouded in secrecy. Then came the decision to keep Archie's birth private. In early May 2019, as Meghan approached her due date, Buckingham Palace issued an unprecedented statement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex would not participate in the traditional post-birth photo call. Instead, they would announce the baby's arrival on their own terms and hold a small, controlled photo shoot days later. For some, this move was understandable. Meghan and Harry had made no secret of their disdain for the British press, and they were determined to protect their child from the media circus. But for others, it only added fuel to the fire. What are they hiding? became a common refrain in online forums. An anonymous midwife interviewed by a tabloid claimed she had never seen Meghan at any of London's major maternity hospitals. Rumors began swirling that Meghan had not given birth at all, and that Archie had been delivered by a surrogate in the United States. Theories even emerged suggesting that Meghan had worn a prosthetic bump for months to maintain the illusion of pregnancy. At the time, royal sources vehemently denied these allegations. "The Duchess carried and delivered her baby," one palace insider said bluntly. But even these statements did little to silence the speculation. By the time Meghan and Harry announced their second pregnancy in 2021, the surrogacy theories had become embedded in the public consciousness. The couple released a photograph showing Meghan lying in Harry's lap, her belly gently rounded under a flowing dress. But rather than quelling the rumors, the photo reignited them. On social media, users pointed out how carefully staged the image appeared. "It's like they're trying too hard to show she's pregnant," one commenter wrote. Others noted that Meghan and Harry were living in California by this time, a state where surrogacy arrangements are common and legally protected. Behind the scenes, Meghan and Harry were allegedly navigating a complex emotional and logistical process. After Meghan suffered her second miscarriage in July 2020, the couple reportedly decided that surrogacy was their best option. But they were caught between two worlds: the progressive, privacy-conscious culture of their new home in the United States and the rigid traditions of the British monarchy. An insider close to the couple claimed they knew they couldn't tell the truth, not yet. They felt like they had no choice but to keep up appearances. Meghan wanted so badly to be seen as the mother of her children, not as someone who had to rely on another woman's body. In the months leading up to Lilibet Diana's birth in June 2021, Meghan was photographed only sparingly. When she did appear, she often wore loose-fitting clothes that concealed her figure. The secrecy surrounding Lilibet's arrival was even greater than with Archie. The Sussexes released only a brief statement announcing her birth, and there were no photographs of Meghan in the hospital, no interviews about her delivery, no details at all. At the time, supporters defended Meghan's right to privacy, but critics saw the omissions as confirmation of their suspicions. Now, with Meghan's tearful confession that she suffered 2 miscarriages and used surrogacy for both children, the whispers have been replaced by a deafening roar. For her defenders, the revelation is a testament to Meghan's resilience and courage. For her detractors, it is seen as proof of deliberate deception. But the truth, as always, is far more complicated than either side wants to admit. Meghan's decision to keep her surrogacy journey private was born out of grief, fear, and a desire to protect her family. Yet in doing so, she may have inadvertently set the stage for the very backlash she sought to avoid. As the world grapples with this revelation, one question looms large: did Meghan Markle's efforts to control her narrative ultimately destroy it? Grief has a way of creeping in silently, wrapping itself around even the brightest moments, until the weight of it becomes impossible to hide. For Meghan Markle, that grief began long before the world ever suspected. While her public image reflected a glowing duchess ready to embrace motherhood, privately she was grappling with a pain so profound it threatened to consume her entirely. The world was told a story of happiness and anticipation. Behind palace walls, a very different reality was unfolding. It was late summer in 2018 when Meghan first discovered she was pregnant. She and Harry had been married only a few months, but both were eager to start a family. According to friends, Harry was ecstatic when Meghan showed him the positive test. "We're going to be parents," she whispered to him one evening at their Nottingham cottage home. Harry reportedly lifted her off her feet and spun her around in sheer joy. For Meghan, it felt like a dream come true. But just as quickly as that dream began, it crumbled. At around 8 weeks, Meghan started experiencing cramps and spotting. At first, she tried to remain calm, believing it was a normal part of early pregnancy. But one morning, as she was preparing for a meeting, she felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen and rushed to the bathroom. There, she realized she was bleeding heavily. She came out of the bathroom pale and trembling, a former aide would later recount. Harry rushed her to the hospital. He looked terrified. Meghan didn't say a word the whole way there. The doctors confirmed their worst fear. Meghan had miscarried. The loss hit Meghan like a tidal wave. In private, she wept for hours, blaming herself for what had happened. She began replaying every moment of the previous weeks, wondering if she had done something wrong, worked too hard, stressed too much, eaten something she shouldn't have. Harry, though devastated himself, tried to be her rock. But friends say he was equally heartbroken, often breaking down in tears when they were alone. Harry kept telling her it wasn't her fault, a close friend revealed. But Meghan couldn't shake the guilt. She felt like her body had failed her, like she had failed him. Publicly, the couple said nothing. Meghan continued to attend engagements with a smile plastered on her face, hiding the turmoil inside. Only a few senior royals were reportedly informed of the miscarriage. The Queen, according to palace sources, expressed quiet sympathy but reminded Meghan and Harry of their duty to the crown and the importance of maintaining composure in public. By October 2018, Meghan was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was announced early, perhaps too early, some critics said. But for Meghan, it was as if she needed to prove to herself, to Harry, and to the world that she could carry a child to term. After the miscarriage, she became almost obsessed with doing everything perfectly, said a friend who spent time with her during that period. She changed her diet, meditated daily, avoided anything that might pose even the slightest risk. It wasn't just about having a baby. It was about proving she was enough. When Archie was born in May 2019, Meghan's relief was palpable. But even in the joy of new motherhood, the shadows of her earlier loss lingered. She kept a journal during this period, entries from which were later leaked by someone within her circle. In one heartbreaking note, she wrote, "Every time I look at Archie, I see the sibling he'll never meet. I wonder what they would have been like. Would they have had Harry's laugh? My smile?" For a while, Meghan poured herself into her role as a mother. But behind the smiles and curated Instagram posts, she was quietly yearning for another child. In early 2020, Meghan became pregnant again. The news was bittersweet. After her first miscarriage, she was overjoyed but also terrified. She was walking on eggshells, a source revealed. Every day felt like holding her breath, waiting for something to go wrong. And then, in July 2020, her worst fears were realized. It was a quiet morning in Los Angeles. Meghan was at home with Archie, changing his diaper, when she suddenly felt a sharp, twisting pain in her stomach. She froze, clutching her abdomen as the pain intensified. Harry, who had been in another room, rushed to her side. Meghan was sobbing, clutching his arm, whispering over and over, "Not again. Please, not again." By the time they arrived at the hospital, Meghan had already lost the baby. The second miscarriage was even more devastating than the first. Meghan withdrew from nearly everyone except Harry and her mother, Doria Ragland. Friends say she would often sit in Archie's nursery for hours, staring blankly at the walls, her eyes red from crying. She was inconsolable, a family friend later revealed. The first loss had broken her, but this one shattered her completely. In November 2020, Meghan surprised the world by publishing an essay in the New York Times titled, "The Losses We Share." In it, she described the pain of losing a pregnancy and the silent suffering so many women endure. The essay was raw and vulnerable, earning praise for its honesty. But even then, Meghan didn't reveal the full extent of her grief. Privately, she and Harry had come to a painful conclusion. Meghan could not risk another pregnancy. The physical and emotional toll was too great. It was then that they began to seriously consider surrogacy. The decision wasn't easy. Meghan had dreamed of carrying her children, of feeling them grow inside her. But after two devastating losses, she and Harry felt they had no choice. They wanted to expand their family, and surrogacy offered their best hope. They spent weeks agonizing over it, said a source close to the couple. Meghan felt ashamed, as if choosing surrogacy meant she was less of a mother. Harry kept reassuring her that their love for their children wouldn't be any less. By early 2021, the couple had quietly started working with a surrogacy agency in California. Meghan and Harry were determined to keep the process private, fearing public backlash and media scrutiny. They wanted to protect their family, said a friend. But Meghan also felt pressure to maintain the image of a traditional pregnancy. She didn't want to invite more criticism than she was already facing. Now, as Meghan's confession ripples across the globe, the world is learning the truth she struggled so hard to hide. Her miscarriages were not just private tragedies. They were turning points that changed the course of her life and shaped her family forever. For some, Meghan's revelation inspires compassion. For others, it raises difficult questions about honesty, image, and the cost of living in the public eye. And for Meghan herself, the grief of those two lost children remains an open wound, one that no confession or public sympathy can ever fully heal. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry finally decided to pursue surrogacy, it was not a choice made lightly or without turmoil. For months, they wrestled with the emotional weight of the decision. Meghan had imagined her journey into motherhood very differently. She had pictured herself carrying her children, feeling them grow and move within her, sharing that physical bond that so many mothers described as transformative. But after 2 devastating miscarriages and doctors' warning of potential complications if she tried again, Meghan and Harry began to accept that surrogacy might be the only way forward. The idea initially made Meghan hesitant. "Will I still feel like their mother?" she reportedly asked a close friend one tearful evening in Montecito. "Will the world see me as less?" Harry, ever supportive, reminded her that biology doesn't define a parent's love. "These children will be ours in every way that matters," he assured her. In early 2021, they began the process discreetly. California's surrogacy laws made it one of the most attractive places in the world for such arrangements. Unlike many countries where surrogacy is illegal or restricted, California allowed intended parents like Meghan and Harry to be recognized as legal parents from the moment of birth. The first step was to choose a surrogacy agency. They selected an elite firm in Los Angeles known for working with high-profile clients. The agency promised airtight confidentiality, background-checked surrogates, and legal teams specializing in protecting the privacy of celebrities. They wanted someone who was not only healthy but also empathetic, said a source close to the couple. They weren't looking for just a womb. They wanted someone who understood the emotional journey they were on. After reviewing dozens of profiles, Meghan and Harry chose a surrogate, a 29-year-old woman described as warm, intelligent, and already a mother herself. The surrogate had previously carried a child for another couple and understood the complex emotions involved. Before proceeding, Meghan insisted on meeting the surrogate in person. In that first meeting, sources say Meghan was visibly nervous but soon relaxed as they spoke about family, hopes, and fears. The surrogate reportedly assured Meghan, "You are their mother. I'm just helping them get here." Meghan broke down in tears and hugged her tightly. The legal agreements were exhaustive. Lawyers for both parties worked for weeks drafting contracts that covered every possible scenario. The documents included medical responsibilities. The surrogate agreed to follow strict health guidelines, including diet, exercise, and avoiding substances that could harm the baby. Regular medical checkups would be scheduled, with Meghan and Harry kept informed at every stage. Financial arrangements. As is standard in such cases, the couple would cover all medical expenses, plus a generous compensation package for the surrogate. Confidentiality clauses. Perhaps the most critical aspect, these clauses prohibited the surrogate from speaking publicly about her role or disclosing any details to the media. Breaching this agreement would result in severe financial penalties. Parental rights. The contracts ensured Meghan and Harry would be recognized as the legal parents from the moment of birth. The surrogate waived any claim to parental rights. At Meghan's request, the surrogate also agreed to journal her experience throughout the pregnancy. "I want to know what it felt like for her," Meghan told Harry. "I want to be able to share that with our child one day, so they understand how deeply they were wanted." Throughout the pregnancy, Meghan was actively involved. She attended medical appointments via video call when she couldn't be there in person. On days when she visited in person, she would bring small gifts and spend hours talking with the surrogate about how she was feeling. Meghan tried to make it as personal as possible, said someone familiar with the process. She didn't want it to feel transactional. This wasn't about hiring someone. It was about creating life together. Yet, even as the pregnancy progressed, the couple were acutely aware of the public image they needed to maintain. Meghan began wearing flowing dresses that hinted at a baby bump and released carefully staged photographs to the press. In one particularly famous image, Meghan lay barefoot in a garden, Harry cradling her head as she smiled serenely, her hand resting gently on her belly. Behind the scenes, however, the couple's anxiety was growing. They knew the truth about the surrogacy could devastate their public image if it ever became public knowledge. Meghan confided in a friend, "If this gets out, they'll never forgive me. They'll say I lied. But how could I tell them? The world wasn't ready for this." Even the royal family's role in the surrogacy process remains a point of controversy. Some insiders claim that Meghan and Harry informed only the Queen and Prince Charles, hoping for their quiet support. Others suggest the entire family was kept in the dark, only learning the truth much later. Harry didn't want his grandmother burdened with secrets, said one source. But at the same time, he feared the palace machinery would leak the story. So he and Meghan kept it to themselves. By May 2021, as the surrogate entered her final trimester, Meghan and Harry prepared for their daughter's arrival. They chose the name Lilibet Diana in advance, a tribute to both the Queen's childhood nickname and Harry's late mother. On June 4, 2021, Lilibet Diana was born in a Santa Barbara hospital. Meghan and Harry were reportedly in the room when the surrogate delivered the baby. Meghan held Lilibet first, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Welcome to the world, my darling." Harry cut the umbilical cord and kissed his wife's forehead. To the world, Meghan and Harry presented the birth as if Meghan herself had carried Lilibet. The announcement released to the press made no mention of surrogacy. It simply stated that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are overjoyed to welcome their daughter. It seemed, for a brief moment, that their secret was safe. But now, with Meghan's tearful confession, the meticulous efforts to conceal the surrogacy have come under intense scrutiny. Critics accuse the couple of constructing a false narrative, while supporters argue they had every right to protect their privacy. And for Meghan, the question lingers: was her silence an act of deception or an act of survival? Secrets are heavy, but some secrets feel impossible to share, especially when the entire world is watching, waiting, and ready to judge. For Meghan Markle, the choice to keep her surrogacy journey private wasn't born out of malice or manipulation. It was, as those closest to her have said, a desperate attempt to survive in a world that had already decided what kind of mother she was allowed to be. The pressure to embody the perfect duchess, wife, and mother began the moment Meghan and Harry's relationship became public. Every detail of her life, from her mixed-race heritage to her career as an actress, was analyzed, praised, criticized, and weaponized against her. By the time she married Harry, the weight of expectation was suffocating. "I felt like I was playing a role," Meghan later confided to a friend. "And if I broke character, even for a second, I'd be destroyed." When Meghan became pregnant with Archie, that pressure intensified tenfold. For centuries, royal mothers were expected to adhere to a rigid script, to conceive naturally, to carry their children with grace, and to present them to the public as heirs of the crown. Anything that deviated from this script was unthinkable. The royal family, steeped in centuries of tradition and public image management, understood the importance of optics. And Meghan knew it too. So when she and Harry made the painful decision to turn to surrogacy after her second miscarriage, they were acutely aware of what was at stake. "They didn't lie because they wanted to trick anyone," said one confidant of the couple. "They stayed silent because they were terrified of the backlash, not just from the public, but from the institution itself. They knew people would accuse Meghan of being vain, of prioritizing her body or career over motherhood. Indeed, Meghan's every move had already been distorted by critics. When she touched her baby bump in public, she was called attention-seeking. When she spoke about the challenges of royal life, she was labeled ungrateful. The thought of revealing she hadn't carried her children herself felt like lighting a match in a room full of dynamite. And then there was the issue of control. By 2020, Meghan and Harry had become painfully aware of how little control they had over their own narrative. The British tabloids twisted their words and actions into salacious headlines, while palace officials leaked stories to deflect from other scandals. Meghan had seen how the institution chewed up and spat out those who strayed from its carefully constructed image. "The monarchy demands perfection," said a former royal aide. A duchess using a surrogate? That wouldn't have fit the fairy tale. It would have raised uncomfortable questions about tradition, about image, about what it means to be a royal mother. Meghan feared not only for herself, but for her children. Would Archie and Lilibet be viewed as less royal if the truth came out? Would they face endless scrutiny over their births? Even Harry, known for his rebellious streak, was torn. On one hand, he wanted to shield Meghan from further pain. On the other, he resented the idea of hiding such a monumental part of their family story. But ultimately, he agreed that silence was the safer path for now. They promised each other it would just be a private decision, said someone close to the couple. They believed they could control the narrative. They didn't realize how heavy that secret would become. Meghan's guilt grew heavier with each passing month. When she appeared in public cradling her stomach during her second pregnancy, she was acutely aware of the deception. "Every time I posed for photos, I felt like a fraud," Meghan allegedly confessed in a private therapy session. "But I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to undo it without everything collapsing." To some, Meghan's choice to perpetuate the illusion of pregnancy is unforgivable. They accuse her of exploiting public sympathy, of using her pregnancies to craft an image of herself as a trailblazing royal mother. Critics point to interviews where she spoke of feeling Archie kick, of being so connected to this little life inside me, and claim she wove a web of lies. But her defenders see a different story. They argue that Meghan's silence was a shield, a way to protect herself from a public that had already weaponized her race, her nationality, her every misstep. People act like surrogacy is shameful, like it makes a woman less of a mother, said one supporter. Meghan didn't owe anyone an explanation. There's another layer to Meghan's fear, the royal family's reaction. According to palace insiders, Meghan and Harry considered telling the Queen about their surrogacy plans but ultimately decided against it. They didn't trust the courtiers to keep it quiet, said one source. And they knew how damaging a leak could be, not just for them, but for the monarchy. In private conversations, Harry allegedly admitted he worried the family would see surrogacy as yet another sign that he and Meghan were breaking tradition and disrespecting the institution. "We couldn't win," Harry reportedly told a friend. "If we were honest, they'd crucify us. If we stayed quiet, we'd still be accused of betrayal when the truth came out. So they chose silence." But secrets have a way of growing heavier over time. By 2023, Meghan began to crack under the weight of hers. Friends noticed she seemed distracted, even depressed, during public appearances. In therapy, she spoke about her fear that Archie and Lilibet would one day discover the truth from someone else and resent her for hiding it. "I wanted to protect them from the world's judgment," Meghan reportedly said. "But maybe I've only set them up for more pain." This inner conflict came to a head during a particularly emotional session in late 2024. Meghan, sobbing uncontrollably, admitted she couldn't keep the secret any longer. "I've been living a lie," she told her therapist, "and it's killing me inside." In the weeks that followed, Meghan began to quietly share her truth with a handful of trusted friends and family members. Some offered compassion. Others were shocked and angry. And then, inevitably, the story leaked. Now, as Meghan faces a storm of public opinion, the world is asking, did she have the right to keep her family's surrogacy private? Or does her status as a public figure demand total transparency? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. For Meghan, the choice to stay silent was never about deceit. It was about survival in a world that demanded perfection from a woman who was never allowed to be imperfect. But with her secret now exposed, Meghan's carefully constructed narrative has crumbled. And the consequences for her, for Harry, and for their children are only beginning to unfold. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry made the heart-wrenching decision to pursue surrogacy, they were well aware that their choice could ignite a firestorm within the monarchy. The British royal family had survived decades of scandals, but nothing in its centuries-long history had prepared it for the possibility of a duchess using a surrogate. To Meghan and Harry, secrecy felt like their only shield. But within the walls of Buckingham Palace, whispers of the truth had already begun to circulate, and the reaction was as complex as the institution itself. From the outset, the Sussexes wrestled with how much to reveal. Harry, though deeply protective of Meghan, felt a lingering sense of duty to his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. "She's the head of the family, and I owe her honesty," Harry reportedly told a close friend. But Meghan feared the consequences of disclosure. "They won't understand," she said tearfully during one conversation, according to palace insiders. "They'll use it against us. They'll say I failed." In the end, Harry and Meghan decided to inform only the Queen and Prince Charles of their surrogacy plans, hoping to secure their quiet support. According to one senior aide, the conversation with the Queen was subdued but emotional. Harry explained that after 2 miscarriages, Meghan's doctors had warned that carrying another pregnancy could endanger her health. They had chosen surrogacy not out of vanity or selfishness, he said, but out of love and a deep desire to grow their family. The Queen, ever the consummate professional, reportedly responded with calm understanding. "Family comes first," she allegedly told her grandson. "Do what you feel is right for your children." But she also cautioned them about the importance of discretion. "The monarchy moves slowly, Harry. The world changes faster than we do. You'll need to protect this choice." Prince Charles's reaction was more guarded. Sources say he expressed sympathy for Meghan's losses, but worried about the public perception of surrogacy. "You know what the press will say," he reportedly warned. "They'll twist it. They'll call it unroyal." This tension was not unfounded. Behind closed doors, other senior royals were already uneasy about Harry and Meghan's modernizing tendencies. From the couple's decision to step back from royal duties to their highly publicized interviews, Many in the family believed the Sussexes were undermining the institution. The idea of surrogacy, a concept alien to centuries of royal tradition, only deepened that unease. A palace aide later revealed there was fear that if the truth came out, it would spark a constitutional debate. Would children born via surrogacy have the same standing in the line of succession? Could the public accept heirs who weren't carried by their royal mother? No one wanted to open that Pandora's box. These questions were never addressed publicly, but within the royal household, they became the subject of heated discussions. Some argued for transparency, believing the monarchy could withstand a modern scandal if handled correctly. Others insisted on secrecy at all costs. In the weeks before Archie's birth, this divide only deepened. Meghan and Harry's decision to keep the details of Archie's delivery private, eschewing the traditional hospital steps photo call, was met with both confusion and frustration inside the palace. They said it was about privacy, but some of us suspected there was more to it, said one former staffer. We didn't know about the surrogacy then, but there were rumors. People talked. The secrecy around Archie's birth fueled speculation in the press. When Meghan didn't appear publicly until 2 days later, holding her newborn at Windsor Castle, the absence of clear details only added fuel to the fire. But palace officials stood firm, issuing brief statements and refusing to engage with the rumors. By the time Meghan and Harry announced they were expecting their second child, the relationship between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family had grown increasingly strained. Harry and Meghan were living in California by then, having stepped down as working royals. Communication between them and Buckingham Palace was sporadic at best. When Meghan miscarried in 2020 and later chose surrogacy to bring Lilibet into the world, most senior royals were kept in the dark. According to a friend of Harry's, he didn't trust the institution anymore. He didn't want the details leaking to the tabloids. But the truth has a way of finding cracks in even the most fortified walls. By early 2022, palace insiders had begun to piece together the story. A source claims that an aide overheard Harry discussing legal documents related to surrogacy during a phone call and reported it up the chain. When this information reached senior courtiers, alarm bells went off. It was explosive, said one insider. There was panic about what it would mean for the family's reputation, for the line of succession, and for public trust. The Queen, now in her mid-90s and facing her own health challenges, reportedly urged the family to tread carefully. We cannot undo what has been done, she allegedly said in a private meeting. But we can choose kindness in how we respond. Not everyone agreed. Prince William, according to some sources, was furious. They've lied to the world, he reportedly said. We've all paid the price for their choices. His wife, Kate Middleton, was more measured but equally concerned about the institution's reputation. When Meghan's surrogacy was finally exposed, leaked by someone within her inner circle, the royal family faced a difficult choice: condemn or support. Publicly, Buckingham Palace issued a brief statement. This is a private matter for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The family asked for respect and privacy at this time. Behind the scenes, reactions were far more complicated. Some members of the family offered quiet support. Princess Eugenie, long close to Harry and Meghan, reportedly reached out privately to express her love and understanding. Others remained cold and distant, unwilling to risk association with a scandal that threatened to overshadow the monarchy. For Meghan, the royal family's response felt like a mixture of betrayal and relief. We were never going to win, she told a friend. Whether we told them or not, whether we lied or not, they would have judged us either way. Harry, torn between his loyalty to Meghan and his love for his family, reportedly confided to a friend, "This isn't just about surrogacy. It's about the fact that they'll never accept Meghan, no matter what she does." As the world debates Meghan's choices, the royal family's own role in the saga remains murky. Did they enable the secrecy by refusing to embrace modern family-building methods? Or were they victims of a deception they never anticipated? The truth lies somewhere in between, a tangled web of love, loyalty, tradition, and fear. And as Meghan's confession reverberates across the globe, the House of Windsor faces its most uncomfortable question yet. Can the monarchy, built on centuries of carefully guarded appearances, survive the raw, unfiltered truth? Secrets rarely stay buried forever, especially not when they involve one of the most famous couples in the world. For Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, their tightly guarded decision to pursue surrogacy was always a ticking time bomb. For years, they fought to control their narrative, building walls around their private lives and shielding their children from the relentless glare of the media. But behind those walls, cracks had begun to form, and the truth, fragile yet unstoppable, was about to pour out. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. In early 2024, an unnamed friend of the Sussexes leaked details of Meghan's surrogacy journey to a U.S. tabloid. The friend claimed they had been present during a therapy session in which Meghan broke down in tears, confessing how she and Harry had struggled to conceive and how their decision to use surrogates for both Archie and Lilibet was born out of grief and desperation. She was sobbing, the source told the reporter. She said, "I've lied to the world for so long. I didn't know how to tell them. Archie and Lily are my children in every way that matters, but I couldn't carry them myself." At first, the tabloid story was met with skepticism. Supporters of Meghan dismissed it as yet another attempt to tarnish her reputation. But as days passed, more details began to surface. Another source, allegedly a former staffer from the Sussexes' Montecito home, confirmed elements of the story. There were no baby supplies in the house during either pregnancy. Meghan and Harry were always traveling, and yet she never appeared visibly pregnant in private, the source claimed. Within a week, the story had exploded. International headlines blared. Meghan's secret. Were Archie and Lilibet born via surrogacy? Social media erupted with debates, hashtags trending worldwide. Supporters defended Meghan fiercely, while critics accused her of fabricating her pregnancies to manipulate public sympathy. But it wasn't until Meghan herself spoke that the whispers became a deafening roar. In an emotional interview with an American journalist, Meghan finally admitted what many had suspected. Sitting in a softly lit room, her voice breaking, she said, "I didn't want to lie. I wanted to protect my children. After losing 2 pregnancies, I felt broken. I felt like my body had failed me, and I didn't want the world to see me as a failure too." The interviewer asked the question on everyone's mind: why keep it a secret for so long? The reaction was immediate and polarizing. In California, paparazzi camped outside the Sussexes' Montecito estate, desperate for a glimpse of the couple or their children. In Britain, the story dominated headlines for weeks, with commentators debating the implications for the royal family. Could children born via surrogacy ever be considered true heirs to the throne? Had Meghan and Harry deliberately misled the public? Buckingham Palace, caught off guard by the revelation, released a brief, carefully worded statement. This is a deeply personal matter for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The family asks for privacy during this time. But behind the scenes, insiders say the royal household was in turmoil. According to a palace aide, senior royals were furious that Meghan and Harry had allowed the secret to leak on their terms, rather than informing the family directly. "They've put us in an impossible position," the aide said. "We're left to clean up the mess." For Meghan, the aftermath was devastating. Friends say she became reclusive, retreating into her Montecito home and limiting her public appearances. She feels like the entire world is judging her, one confidant revealed. Even though she's finally told her truth, the relief she hoped for hasn't come. Harry, meanwhile, was torn between supporting Meghan and grappling with his own feelings of guilt. He keeps saying, "I should have protected you better," said a friend. But he's also angry at the press, at the palace, at everyone who made them feel like they had to keep this secret. And yet, amid the firestorm, there were moments of unexpected grace. Supporters around the world rallied behind Meghan, flooding social media with messages of solidarity. Women shared their own stories of miscarriage, infertility, and surrogacy, using hashtags like #WeStandWithMeghan and #EveryMotherMatters. But even as her defenders grew louder, so did her critics. Some accused Meghan of manipulating public sentiment by sharing her confession only after being exposed. Others questioned whether her decision to hide the surrogacy was an act of self-preservation or deliberate deception. The truth, as always, was far more complex than either side wanted to admit. In private, Meghan and Harry wrestled with how to tell their children. Archie, now old enough to ask questions, had started noticing the chatter. "Why are people saying those things about you, Mummy?" he reportedly asked one day. Meghan, fighting back tears, told him gently, "Because they don't understand yet. But one day, you will." As the dust settled, one thing became clear. Meghan and Harry's carefully crafted narrative had been shattered, and the fallout was only beginning. For years, they had fought to keep their family life sacred. But now, with the truth laid bare, they were forced to navigate a world where privacy seemed impossible. And the question that haunted Meghan most was this: had her silence protected her children, or had it only exposed them to greater harm?